Okay, so these are notes from 5.1b now, which is multiplying and dividing our rational expressions. Okay, so similar to what we just did at the beginning, except you won't really have to find any restrictions for these. You're just multiplying them together like we've done with regular fractions in the past. This would be pretty similar to that. So I'm just gonna go through multiplying first. Okay, because most of this deals with multiplying. Division is just basically a variation of how we're gonna multiply this together. For these cases, these are just some of the steps that I follow for what we're gonna do. We want to factor out everything, so factor out the numerator, okay, and the denominator, so the top and the bottom. So we want to factor that out completely, if it does factor out. Then from there, you're multiplying across, so multiply across from top to bottom, so basically across the numerators and across the denominators. Then we want to divide out or cancel out any common factors. Okay, so if there's factors that are similar, like we did on the last lesson, you cancel them out. If there's stuff that may divide, like 4 at the top and 2 at the bottom, then you would divide that like it would normally divide. Okay, so for multiplying, you may get some where you'd have cases like 25s squared over 36t squared times 6s squared over 5t. Okay, well, you can pretty much go about this either way, where you're multiplying like normal across, or you can do like we've done some situations in the past where you'll divide out the common factors that they may have with each other and then multiply across to have less to deal with. It's kind of up to you how you go about it. Like normally, some of the diagonals will have some common factors here, like 25 and 5 both divide out by 5. S is at the top and the bottom, so you wouldn't be able to divide any of that out. 36 and 6 both divide out by 6. So if you would do that at the beginning, it kind of gets rid of some of the common factors that they would have, and it would make smaller numbers to deal with. So if we divide the top and the bottom by 5 for these two corners, that would give us 5 up here and 1 right here. Then at the same diagonal here, if we divide both of these by 6, we would get 6 at the bottom here and 1 at the top here. So now we have a little bit less to deal with. We have 5s squared right here over 6t squared times 1s squared over 1t. So a little bit less to multiply out. You won't have anything to simplify in the end. So 5 times 1 is just going to be 5. S squared times s squared is going to be s to the 4. Remember, you add your exponents, 2 plus 2. And then over 6 times 1 is 6. And then t squared times t is going to be t cubed, t to the 3rd. Okay, 2 plus 1. So that would be the answer that you would type in for that. Okay, nothing else can simplify out. Sometimes you may have to check to make sure something doesn't simplify if you didn't pick the biggest factor that they had at the beginning. Okay, now another way to pretty much go about this is basically just multiplying straight across and then dividing out the factors in the end. Especially since you'll have a calculator, you can use the calculator to practice that part of it. Like if we have our problem where we may have something similar to that, 12b squared over 3a times 15a over 6b You may find it easier to just get these combined together first and then simplify it later on the calculator, or divide by dividing out the factors. Like if we would do our multiplication from the top, we would do our 12 times our 15, giving us 180. B squared times A would just be AB squared. Okay, you can't combine A and B together, you just leave them separate. And then same thing at the bottom, 3 times 6 would be 18, and then A times B would be AB. So either you can notice that 180 and 18 both divide evenly. 18 goes into 180 10 times, so that would work out, and you would just divide that like normal. You could do it on the calculator the same kind of way. 180 divided by 18 is 10. You would write this as 10 at the top. Okay, it divides out evenly at the top. Then A and A cancel out pretty much. A divided by A is going to cancel. You have 2 B's at the top and 1 at the bottom, so only one of these is going to cancel out at the top. So you're still going to have a B left over. Okay, and then the 1 would be left over at the bottom, but you don't have to put that. So that's either way for you. You can multiply it straight across at the beginning, or you can divide out some common factors they have at the beginning first to have less numbers to worry about. Like some of these can get into some pretty large numbers, so you may have to simplify them a little bit more. So that's just up to you how you want to do that. Okay, now if you're multiplying with a little bit more involved, like let's say x squared minus 16 over 21 times 7 over x plus 4 squared. Okay, well in these cases, like you'll have to follow the steps of factoring. So there's definitely some factors that have to happen. As soon as there's an x squared in here, this can factor out. This is already pretty much factored out for you, but you may want to separate it so that you can see that. So remember, x squared minus 16 is a difference of square. So 4 times 4 is 16. So remember that changes into x plus 4 times x minus 4. That's our special kind over 21. Then times 7. This is x plus 4 times x plus 4. X plus 4 squared would write out twice. So you can change it to x plus 4 times x plus 4 to see it a little bit better. So when I say to multiply across, these would multiply all the way across, and then 21 would multiply with both of these. But you don't want to necessarily multiply it out. You just want to get it together. So usually I just make this into one big fraction so that you know that all these are factors where stuff can start canceling out or dividing. So we have an x plus 4 at the top and an x plus 4 at the bottom, so that'll cross out. And then 7 and 21 divide by 7. So we can divide that out as their common factor or simplify the fraction. And remember, you can do that on the calculator too. If you would do 7 divided by 21, because the top divided by the bottom, it would give you the fraction if you have a calculator like mine. So that's 1 over 3. So it wouldn't be just 3. You'd have a 1 left over at the top times our x minus 4. Okay, both of those would be left because we divided both of these by 7. And you'd have our 3 at the bottom times an x plus 4. Okay, so you don't necessarily need the 1 there. You can just have it as x minus 4 over 3 times x plus 4. Now you can distribute this 3 out and multiply it out, but you don't have to. You can leave the answers like this in factored form as long as you canceled out all the common factors or divided them out. Okay, so let's look at another one like that. So if we have y plus 8 over y squared plus 2y minus 15 times y squared minus 5y plus 6 over y plus 8. Okay, so same thing needs to happen. We need to factor out everything that we can. The y plus 8s aren't going to factor in this case, but these are trinomials they can factor out if they have factors of 15 that add to 2. Okay, so in this case that would be 3 and 5, where the 3 would be negative. Negative 3 times 5 is negative 15. Negative 3 plus 5 is positive 2. So this is going to change to y plus 8 over y minus 3 times y plus 5. Okay, then over here, this factors out the same way. We have 2 times 3 is 6 they can both be negative to still be a positive 6 and end up with that negative 5. So we'd have y minus 2 times y minus 3 over here, still over the y plus 8. So you remember you can combine this together and start canceling out any common factors that they would have. So in this case, y plus 8 is for sure common at the top and the bottom. Y minus 3 is also common at the top and the bottom. So y minus 2 and y plus 5 would be left. The y minus 2 is still at the top. Y plus 5 is still at the bottom. So make sure you leave everything where it goes. And then that would be our factor form of that, or a reduced form of that. Okay, so for division, it's going to be pretty similar. You're basically going to change it into a multiplying problem and then follow the same exact steps. So first, that's what we want to do. We want to change our problem into multiplication. And we're going to do that by flipping the second fraction, or taking the reciprocal of the second fraction. Okay, so in other words, if we have something like this, P over Q divided by R over S, we're not going to ever divide across like we would normally multiply. You're always going to change it into P over Q stays the same. The first fraction doesn't change, the first rational expression. The division changes into multiplication, and then this side flips. So instead of R over S, it's going to be S over R. So whatever's over there would flip. Okay, then after that, you just follow the same multiplication rules. So the same multiplication rules we just did, all of that's going to be the same. You just have that one step at the beginning. So let's look at a couple like that. So same situation can happen with this. So 4y squared over 15x divided by 16y cubed over 15x squared. So same thing needs to happen that we just did in that steps up here. This part will stay the same, but we want to change this into multiplying. Don't start dividing or factoring out anything just yet. So we leave our first fraction the same. Okay, then change to multiplication. Now it's going to be 5 times 15x squared over 16y cubed. So that second fraction flips around. Then all of the same rules are going to apply. Either you can start dividing out the common factors that they have, or you can start multiplying straight across, okay, like we did on that second problem. So if you feel like the other way was a little bit easier, we know that 4 times 15 is going to be 60. Y squared times x squared is going to be x squared y squared over, the same thing's going to happen here, 15 times 16, so 240, and then x times y cubed. Okay, then same thing we need to happen for what we did earlier. Remember, you can do on the calculator where we have 60 divided by 240, and it should give you the fraction of that, 1 over 4. So we'd have 1 left over at the top and 4 at the bottom. Okay, then the x's would have 2 at the top and 1 at the bottom, so we'd only have 1 left over at the top, 2 at the bottom and 2 at the top and 3 at the bottom, so we'd have 1 y left over at the bottom. So cancel this part out and cancel that part out to leave where they are. So we'd have x over 4y as our final answer. Okay. And then same rules are going to apply with what we've had for the longer situations, like if we have 5x squared minus 42x minus 27 over x minus 5 divided by x minus 9 over x squared minus 9x plus 20. So this time we can't just multiply straight across because there's some subtraction and addition going on here. We need to start factoring these out. 5x squared minus 42x minus 27, that's a trinomial, but remember if there's a number in front, you have to multiply it out to the number at the end and use factoring that way. So I'm going to kind of do that off to the side right here. 5x, well, we multiplied that out. So x squared times r, 5 times r, negative 27, so minus 42x minus 135. Okay, so we need to factor this out by finding our factors of 135 that are going to add to our negative 42. Okay, so in this case, that's going to be 15 times our 9. Yes, so 15 and 9. Okay, so since it's a negative, one of these has to be negative to be able to work out for that. And, do something wrong there. Wait. Nope, it's not 15 and 9. Okay, so 135 to work out for that would be negative 42. $75, okay. So 135 Okay, so we're going to use 45 and 3. So that's the one. So we'd have negative 45 to get negative 45 minus 3. Plus 3 would be negative 42. So remember, we write it as x plus 3 times x minus 45. But since we multiplied in that 5 at the beginning, we have to divide out the 5 by our factors. So the 5 doesn't divide with the 3. That would give us 5x plus 3. 45 and 5 divide out to give us 9. So this is the longer kind, so that ended up being 5x plus 3 over x, times x minus 9 over x minus 5. Times, okay, this is going to have to flip, remember, so this part is going to be at the top. We'd have that 20 to be 5 and 4, both to be negative, to give us x plus 5 times x, x minus 5 times x minus 4 over x minus 9. Okay, so we have the x minus 5s that would cancel out, the x minus 9s. We'd only be left with stuff at the top, and that'd be 5x plus 3 times x minus 4. So that would be how we would do that one. Okay, so all of them are pretty similar to what that is. You just need to make sure you know how to factor what we have at the beginning. Okay.